If you watched our last episode, you're going to know that I focused my lens this time on one of my most favorite subjects in the world. What am I talking about? Well, feminine beauty, sensuality, and sexuality. Except in this episode, we're going to go a shade darker, a shade richer, a shade deeper, and I would even say a shade more beautiful, and all to give a little bit more than lip service to female empowerment. Join me for tomorrow's journey. There's a quote from a poem written by Muriel Rukeyser, and it goes like this. What would happen if one woman told the truth about her life? The world would split open. Sounds terrifying and intriguing to me. So I decided to explore a little bit deeper by asking, 3 women in my life to split open their world to us today. So I whipped up a batch of mimosas and invited a few important women over, had them on the comfy couch, and started asking questions so that I could be part of the inner sanctum, the inner circle of sisterhood, if you would. And it starts with, the most important woman in any of our lives, guys, our moms. That's Joan, aka Mom, from one of her headshots when she was acting. Beautiful, no? Hey, but that's my mother you're talking about. But aside from being Mom, she's very much her own woman. And it's only now, as I'm beginning to show some signs of maturity myself, at last, that I'm actually coming to understand just what a life she's led to become the gal that she is. But to make this conversation ever the more relevant, I decided to also include a couple of other ladies that are very important in my life, my sexiest beauties, if you would. And most important, I figured, let me go back to the source of romance for me, my very first girlfriend, my high school sweetheart, Sangeeta. That's her and me back in the day. And now, with grown kids, college age, she's back on her own career path, launching back into her fashion career with her own fashion line. You go, girl. And perhaps most important, I invited another powerhouse female influence in my life, my co-producer, colleague, and dearest female friend, Alibe. When she's not guiding me, informing me, motivating me, and even occasionally kicking my bad habits, she's focused on her own adventure in sustainability and saving the planet. And around the second batch of mimosas, we dove head first in our conversation about beauty.
I think the more I work on the inside, the more beautiful I feel in the outside.
A woman's perspective on sensuality.
I mean, it's an aura of the human being.
And sexuality.
Women have not been allowed to speak until quite recently openly about sexuality.
Yeah.
And even now there's a struggle over abortion, women's rights.
Which I think is just absolutely absurd.
And other important perspectives.
I mean, think back of how many families have been matriarchal, where the woman has been left to raise the children, and even my grandmother. I'll tell you the story of my grandmother, who came here from the old country as like a mail order bride.
Oh, wow.
And she lived on a farm in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, which was iron ore country, and the men made their lives by going down into the mine, and the mines would cave in. She was married 3 times because her husbands kept getting killed in the mine.
Oh, you're kidding.
She ran the farm, she raised the children. That was a matriarchal family because the men all perished. And that's not a unique story. I think that's happened a lot in the history of this country and other countries as well.
Even a little poetry.
I'd like to share my poem. It's very brief. It's called Wonder Woman. Unabashed, I dashed down the street in stars and striped Spanx pants, thighs threatening to burst the seams of the expanding fabrics, demanding greater space to accommodate my declaration of feminine independence. As I disregard the snide asides of passerbys, commenting on the size of my formidable assets, Wonder Woman, that's me.
A mimosa with the muses. Let's listen in some more. So ladies, is there a sisterhood? And if so, how important is it to women?
I think it's fact. I mean, I think most women would be lost without their close women friends. I know I would when I mean, especially through something like COVID, to have people you could call and just talk your heart out if you wanted to.
Alibe, has that been your experience?
There is a certain competition between professionals, and even with my own sister, sometimes we have these crazy relationships. But in the very end, I think we can always resolve, even if we have any issues in between, and stick to the cause and help each other when it's needed. If we have to have advice as mothers, we can always advise each other. If we have to give an advice as somebody who has been a spouse, a wife, and is going through troubles, the beauty is that if one is suffering, all the girls in the circle would tell their stories, so the other person could feel you're not alone. You are not going through these hard times alone. You have us, and we are always here to help you however we can.
I don't think it's always like that, though. I really don't. I wish it was like that, but I don't think a lot of women support each other, unfortunately, and I think it's a sad thing. But it's my experience that when it's not always supportive.
So you're all referencing the cattiness between women. That's not something we've made up as men, right? That really exists?
Especially, going into this other side, which is the professional side, where things can get really ugly, especially with jealousy,
Competition, yeah.
And also because it comes from the fact that some women were really hard to get up there, and then they don't want to be bumped for another woman, right? So this type of professional settings, it makes it a little harder for women to even attempt sisterhood.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
Is it cultural?
I grew up in India for the first 10 years of my life, and I think there was a lot more sisterhood in a culture like India as opposed to in the States.
Sure,
that's been my experience.
Because when you grew up, it probably was a lot less materialistic society than what we have here.
Right, right. Plus, it was just about. It was kind of it was a circle of girls, right? I grew up in a household full of female cousins, and we kind of did all the girly things together. And whereas I think in the United States, I think it's, I think that's definitely there, but it's pockets, and I think more women should start.
You know where I saw it
each other
demonstrated to an amazing degree? When I was working at Columbia Presbyterian, I was very active in the breast cancer area, because I worked on special projects to fundraise and stuff. And it was always so moving the way women would come to share with women who had been diagnosed and had to and I found that, and I mean, I was blessed. I was always, a person from the administrative side, but I watched the interaction of these women, and it was very powerful to see that in many cases, I have to tear up just thinking of this. Aww. In many cases, that was what helped a person survive. Yeah. That someone who had gone through that would take the time to be with them, and even to, open their shirt and show their scars.
Well, in our last episode, as you know, we reference beauty, or more specifically, the curse of beauty. And so my question to all of you is it a curse or is it a blessing? What's your perspective?
You referenced Audrey Munson, and she's a perfect example of being exploited. First of all, you have to consider the time she lived in the early 20th century, and she was exploited, and she was exploited by men to the nth degree. And then when they were through with her, they trashed her. And if she was institutionalized at 40, well, they figure a woman's done with at 30, so, lock her up for 66 years, which is what they did with Audrey Munson.
So is it youth over beauty?
It really depends on what that ideal of beauty is. Going from young to old, my mom's now getting older, and I see the beauty in her as a woman who's lived a full life, and so they're all different stages of beauty, if you will.
Alibe, your thoughts?
That is the curse. The curse is not that either you're beautiful or ugly, it's that we put that curse on us, and we continue measuring our beauty against everything else. And you're gonna lose, because there's so many varieties of beauties out there. How can you compare yourself?
All right. So what's your collective advice to the so-called sisterhood, if you would? What's the takeaway?
I think the thing that comes to me when you talk about beauty, and of course it's factored by my age as well, is that you have to own your own voice in the world. You have to feel that you have something to contribute, and it doesn't matter what kind of package it comes in.
Give me an example.
I mean, you can think of people who are so in some physically incapacitated, and yet they contribute to the world in an enormous way.
absolutely.
So it has more to do with, forget about the exterior package and what is the voice about? What is
the
that
inner strength?
What is that message inside you?
Yeah.
I mean, can you label it a soul or whatever it is, but it's talking to you all the time.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't say, well, you're ugly, so keep your mouth shut, or you're crippled, so keep your mouth shut.
It's like the real inner voice. Yeah.
The real.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
Audrey's tale, I think, really exemplifies the changing role of women, right? And also, for that matter, the dynamic between man and woman. Do you think we're finding a balance at this point?
I'm having a little trouble with these issues because I think in part is the way we've been oppressed by the male figure, because they are the ones making the money supposedly, and while you are sacrificing the time having kids, you have to allow yourself to be maintained by your husband. I hate that saying. If I was ever told that I was maintained, I threw that back immediately, because I made a list of all the services I provide in my house. And if I would have to get paid for those services,
It'll be a
a
big
husband
bill.
could not afford.
Uh-oh.
I think of the wonderful relationship that Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her husband had, where he encouraged her every step of the way. He did the cooking, and he
Fantastic.
spent.
There are not a lot of
he
men
was-
like that, yeah.
And he was a very successful lawyer in his own right.
Yeah.
But I think there are those stories where.
Yeah. And we need more men like that.
Yeah, and I think I think maybe I hope for the younger generation. I think because their thinking is changing.
But
Yeah.
that's on us. That is on women, how we raise our boys.
So, if there is a sisterhood of the traveling pants, I want to start a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So, ladies, I'm going to ask you, what should be the criteria for us men that want to, dare I say, enlist and serve?
For that, we need like a year to explain to men how we feel about it.
Sorry?
I think this is the most important thing, and from then you can branch into everything else. You have to have an equal partner, an equal partner at all levels. I think when a man comes to a woman at that level, everything can happen, so many possibilities. So for that gentleman's club, he has to know that.
Well, ladies, I just want to thank you again for being here and not raking me over the coals personally, but really giving us your perspective and maybe a few lessons, not only for the sisterhood, but also for the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So, kids, the moral from today's lesson? Well, I think it's in two parts. One, for the ladies. Well, honor the sisterhood, right? As you make it, as you advance, even small advancements, turn around, reach back out, and lend a helping hand to pull up a fellow sister. Don't add to the fray and cut to the quick, as too many other people are going to do that anyway. Push through and persevere together. And for the guys, the gentlemen, right? Because we want to join and make that club. Let's imagine every woman we meet, every woman we work with, talk to, or even reach out to, maybe get intimate with. Think of them, that they are somebody's mother, sister, daughter, some other connection. And if they were a relation like that to you, how would you want them to be treated? How would you want them to be spoken to, cared for? How would you tend to their dreams, their ambitions, and even sometimes support them through their own curse of beauty? That's the takeaway from today's lesson. And if we could all do that, imagine the community that we would build together. And that's what we're about here on Tomorrow's Journey, gaining perspective so that we can travel forth tomorrow for a better future together. I thank you for joining me. Remember, we're honoring a few ladies out there, or feminine energy at large, I would even say. All you have to do is subscribe, drop a comment, and you could win some Sexiest Beauty lipstick to honor either that sexiest beauty in your life, or you just want to speak out on your own beauty. Go ahead and drop us a line. And remember, subscribe, as I mentioned, comment, like, and share. I'm Jeff Oppenheim. Until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay sexy.